It's well understood that securities or financial products are intangible goods, difficult to evaluate as they cannot be inspected in the same way as other consumer products. They are claimed to future income of companies, so they are surrounded with uncertainty. Financial market, in addition, typically fails if left alone. They are affected by information asymmetries between participants in the sense that consumers of financial products are typically less well informed than the seller. Therefore, consumers are particularly vulnerable to malicious sellers offering products that are not as good as they are claimed. The information asymmetries could lead to a lemon market dynamic and adverse selection. What do we mean for that? When the buyer of a product cannot assess properly the value of what she is purchasing, she may be willing to pay no more than an average price, something in between a bargain price and a premium price. This will push the seller of a good product to move away from the market, as she will be reluctant to sell his product at an average price because it's lower than the true value. Bad product will take the place of the good one, bringing, in the worst case scenario, to the collapse of securities market with serious harm for the economy as a whole. How do we fix those market failures? The main regulatory response adopted all over the world is information regulation in the form of mandatory disclosure on market participants, issuers, and providers of financial products. Assuming that market forces alone do not grant spontaneously an optimal amount of information, mandatory disclosure in financial market pursues plenty of goals of core importance. First, it protects investors, providing information to help them make better decisions and to remove asymmetries of information as between insider and outsider in the capital market. Investors should feel confident that they are properly protected if something goes wrong. So, disclosure will boost their confidence in the market, preserving the well functioning, the growth, if not the existence of the market itself. Secondly, mandatory disclosure, coupled with pre approval of disclosure documents by public authority, may serve the function of screening for fraud and amateurish initiatives, in so representing a useful barrier to entry. Third, mandatory disclosure ensures that prices fully reflect all relevant information, helping financial markets in their fundamental function of efficiently allocating scarce financing resources across the economy. Price accuracy boosts liquidity, lowers volatility, decreases cost of capital for companies, and promote market allocative efficiency at the benefit of the economy as a whole. Finally, mandatory disclosures serve as a commitment device for companies that want to signal to the market that they are acting seriously. In a nutshell, disclosure make markets work more efficiently and offer investors and savers additional opportunities to put their money at work, as we read in the preamble of the prospectus regulations. Focusing on the European capital markets, all the major European institutions and national supervisory authorities are involved in the mandatory disclosure process, basically in two ways. First, by setting the level playing field with rules concerning timing, content, characteristic of information to be disclosed. The same rules identify exemption to disclosure obligation, as could be the case that an investor is enough experienced not to require the law protection, or when disclosure costs exceed the benefit for smaller offering, for example, like the crowdfunding one. In the second way, consists in assuring a proper enforcement. Concerning the rulemaking process, the core of regulation about disclosure in financial market stem from legislative acts adopted by European institutions, Commission, Parliament, and Council. These acts take the form of regulation, which automatically and uniformly applies into member states, and directive, a legislative act that sets out a goal that all the EU countries must achieve, but leave to the individual countries to conceive their own ways on how to reach these goals. In addition to that, the regulatory framework is completed by a variety of soft law instruments like recommendation, Q&A guidelines, which are not legally binding but serve as a very useful tool to suggest a line of action or clear some doubts about the meaning of a certain rule. When we talk about European disclosure regulation, we refer to a number of fields. We can mention periodic financial information presented by issuer of securities, event-driven disclosure providing updates to the markets about material change in company's life, prospectus to be published when securities are offered to the public or admitted to trading on a regulated market in EU member states, and key information documents concerning characteristics and risk of financial product sold by banks or other financial providers. Of course, rules are pointless without proper supervision and enforcement mechanism. Ensuring that investors are given clear and relevant information and market prices reflect all the relevant information falls into the mandate of national financial market supervisory authority and the ESMA, the European Security and Market Authority. All of them are part of the European system of financial supervision, a decentralized multi-layer system of micro and macro prudential authorities established by the European treaties in order to ensure consistent and coherent financial supervision in the EU. Finally, it's worth mentioning that disclosure regulation is one of the key pillars of Capital Markets Union, an initiative launched by European Commission in 2015 that aims to strengthen Europe's financial system by providing alternative sources of financing and more opportunities for consumers and institutional investors. How? By reducing compliance costs with simpler, clearer, and more proportionate rules for businesses and financial providers without prejudice for the investor protection. With CMU in place, it should be easier for companies to seek more funding from across the Union, and it should be easier for financial services providers to scale up and offer their service to a wider range of customers in different member states.